to a special open forum we're going to have today to discuss what a lot of you guys have been very, very nervous about. I've got a lot of interaction over this weekend, a lot more than usual. I get it. I understand it. There's a lot of unknown out there, which we're going to discuss today, some of it. There's a lot of it's going to remain unknown. If you got the message from the Florida Association of Realtors, from the president, she says she doesn't know yet. And there's so much that's unknown about this and what's going to happen. A lot of this is anybody's guess, but we have some steps that we're going to take. We have the steps that we all need to take together. Some of it's going to be mandatory, industry-wide. Some of it's going to be FRI stuff. But we're going to go forward. We're all going to do fine. We're going to make it. Well, not all of us. Those of us who work hard and prove our worth are going to do really, really well. So it's an opportunity, guys, and that's not bluster. It really is an opportunity for those of you who do a great job to do even better. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to you guys to ask questions. You guys have been through this. If you, some of you just received the NAR info that they sent out. They've got a frequently asked question or Q&A sheet, and they've got a statement that they made. Looks like it was thrown together pretty quickly. It's got a lot of information on it that is still it's not settled. So let's get started. If you guys have any questions, the things that they're doing, that for those of you that like the overview of this is they were sued for billions of dollars. They settled for $400 and something million. Yes, your NAR dues are going to go up. They have 4 years to pay this, and the 2024 has already been done. So they have 3 years to pay $450 million or whatever it is. So yes, I would say that your NAR dues are going to go up somewhat significantly. I'm going to unplug my phone. So your NAR dues are going to go up somewhat significantly, and we're going to have to deal with that. So you guys go ahead and start with some questions. I've got Carissa on here. Please welcome Carissa Lawhon, our broker owner, and she's here to answer any questions. At 1:45, we're going to have Paul Massey from Samaritan Mortgage come on, Samaritan Group. You guys know Paul. He's going to be answering questions from the lending standpoint. There's tons of questions about what we're going to do, how we're going to find these buyer brokerage funds, etc. So I'm going to let you guys take over with some questions right now.
I'll start if you want. Nobody else has spoken up. Can you hear me?
Angie.
Okay. So I see on the settlement fact sheet, it's saying the implications for us as members. Then it says a bunch of other things, implications. Which one is our brokerage? Like brokerage owned members, NAR and other else? Like which one of those applies?
I'm not sure I understood the question. Can you repeat that?
Yeah. So the settlement fact sheet that Ryan sent over, it says coverage of NAR's release. The first thing says implications for members. I get that. Anyone that's a member of
We
NAR.
are covered.
Okay.
We are covered. We are one of the agencies that had less than 2 billion residential volume in 2022. The difference is that those who had above that were named defendants, as I understand it.
Got it. Thanks.
That's right. That's the part that we were covered in.
So I had a question. I have a question.
Ryan. Yes.
Patty.
Hold on.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So in line of just the same questioning there, some of the brokers did settle individually, like Coldwell Banker, I understand did, whereas some of the other ones did not. So you're saying that because we have a certain less amount of assets or something we are covered under Florida Realty Investments.
Correct.
Is that what that means?
Right. We are part of the encompassing NAR decision. So each defendant has their own ability to make the decisions of the terms of a settlement for the folks they are representing. So had our agency been named, then we would have had the option to go along with this settlement, create our own, or not settle at all, which is why those, for instance, who are part of a brokerage owned by Home Services of America, which is one of the is I think the only one that has still not settled, those agents as well as those brokerages could still be open to liability lawsuits, that kind of thing. But we were covered by the blanket. I mean, if you consider this as something positive or something negative, NAR's settlement decision, good or bad. But you don't have to worry about any future liability as a result of this.
Okay, Bonnie, and then Marcus, and then John. Bonnie, you have a question?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't think my hand was up.
All right, Marcus.
Okay, yeah, just for a little clarity, right? So we're going to get into a lot of the meat and potatoes, a little clarity. In essence, there's several changes. The first one's going to be sort of, again, just for clarity, make sure everyone has that same understanding what you do. Example, if you're taking a listing, there's nothing prohibiting you, for example, to say we're doing 5%, 4%, whatever that percentage is. The difference is here,
That's
my
correct.
understanding is that we can't say at that point, we're going to give X to somebody else and advertise it in the MLS. That's the restriction. So in essence, 5, 6, 4, whatever that is, doesn't change. It's just the second part of that conversation you had with the listing person, with the client, doesn't happen. The second part saying, hey, by the way, we agreed to 5, I'm giving 2.5 and sign
Exactly.
that.
Expect to see some changes to some form. Expect to see some changes to what your listing agreement looks like, what it's asking your seller to agree to take out of the total percentage. And then MLS has said that what they will be doing is removing the buyer agent compensation field. However, they will create a combination of fields where your seller, you as the listing agent, can still put in compensation or compensation offers, not commission necessarily, but maybe some incentives that the seller is willing to offer the buyer. Now, we don't know exactly how that is interpreted. Okay, that could be simply, I'll pay this number of points, I'll contribute 5,000 towards closing costs. It might go all the way up to saying something like, I'll contribute this much towards your buyer agent, your buyer broker agreement, because that's the other side of this, is that from now on, if you're an NAR member, you will have to, if you're going to work with any buyer, you have to have a buyer brokerage agreement signed, and expect that the form that you're used to of that to change as well. Make it a little bit tighter, make it a little bit more well-rounded in terms of getting you some commission promised on the table right up front.
Right. So in essence, that's the point is that part of the negotiation is in essence shouldn't change. If it's, we always agree 4, 5, 6, it's the second part that changes. We don't have them sign where it's 2.5 was going here, 2.5 going there. In essence, they agree to 5. Let's just use the number for the argument's sake, 5%. We agreed to 5%. What happens after that? It doesn't matter if we decide to split 2.5%. What we can't do, I'm just asking for clarity, I'm not telling what I'm asking clarity. We can't obviously put that on the MLS, but in essence, in that sense, at least we're ready to receive a call or whatever third platform that may be available to say, here's your compensation. The client hasn't been told anything wrong. We haven't done anything breaking the rule. We agreed to 5%. What happens to that 5 after the fact shouldn't change.
Completely correct. Ryan, do you have any thoughts to add on that?
I do. We discussed this morning, the MLS is going to give you a place to put that, any kind of what they're offering, what the seller is offering, and whether, just like you guys have put in there before, hey, the seller is willing to work with you on a new roof, or $8,000 toward a new roof, or $5,000 toward new appliances, or whatever it is. I believe that's what they're going to do, is have a place in there where the seller is going to offer concessions, and a concession area where you could say that. Now, that's all to be determined, guys. We don't know the answer to that yet, but there's going to be a place on there, and lots of people are they still have the ability to do what you're talking about, Marcus, which is say, hey, yeah, we're going to still do 5%, and we can, you guys and Marcus can put in, I'm going to call it a concession area, maybe even realtor remarks like you would now.
Correct.
Seller is generously offering 2.5% to cover buyers' brokerage compensation.
Right, because they were very clear in that verbiage in one part, I don't have it highlighted, where it says they're trying to point that we just can't use MLS. I think it even says there are other means, so we can talk about it. We can email each other. So many different ways to communicate that. The point should be is that we agreed to with the client 5%, 6%, whatever it is. After that, they're off. They're not in the what I do. Give 3, give 2, give 1, and how I communicate it doesn't affect them as long as we're not able to put it in the MLS. That, to me, if we look at it that way, is really the only major change. How we're going to communicate that, and there's going to be so many other opportunities to do that.
Yes, and the seller is still going to compensate the buyer's agent quite often.
The fruit and as the contract for your sister.
The seller is still going to compensate the buyer's agent quite often. How they do that is what's to be determined, and that can be done by email. It can be done by, you guys will negotiate that and just get it in writing, what you're going to do for now to help cover this. You're also going to have buyer brokerage agreements. Those are going to be mandatory, guys. Buyer brokerage agreements are going to be mandatory if you want to get paid. What we don't know what is going to happen yet or not is, or how it's going to be handled ethically, etc. If you don't want to show listings that aren't going to pay you, you've got a first-time buyer who can't pay, or VA who can't pay the buyer brokerage agreement amount. So how do you handle that? Do you guys still have to show John's listing where he's not offering anything, or can I just show Sean's and Angie's where they're offering me, 2% to 3%? So that's all to be determined.
And further to that as well, Reggie, you'll have the opportunity, I believe, in your written offers, you'll have pre-negotiated in your buyer brokerage agreement an offer a compensation that the buyer's paying you. And then as you write each offer, you'll be able to add that to the offer. You could even ask for more commission if a property's been on the market for a little bit longer, and the listing agent seller may have to pay that to you in order for you to bring your buyer. So there's a universe here, I think, of an incredible opportunity where there's some commission and some fee stacking, where you're getting paid, not only are you not getting paid, but you're getting paid from a variety of sources. 1, your buyer, 2, possibly the seller as part of the contract, and 3, we're aware that already lenders are working to try to find ways to wrap some of these costs into the loan, and in order to get buyer agents paid. And that's one of the things that our speaker at 1:45 will be talking to us about.
Okay, next is John, then David, then Rakesh, and then Christina, and then more. But John, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm literally working on a listing, waiting for it to get signed back, and I even though I knew this was out here, I didn't know what to move forward with. It's a vacant land listing. I'm using 6%. So we don't know how that's going to flesh out on the back end when we get offers. So that's kind of where I kind of feel we're running into. And the other question is, does this apply to all listings through the MLS, whether it's a 5 or more commercial versus rentals, leasing, and of course, for sale, anything?
It's going to be everything. You won't be able to offer compensation to a cooperating broker on MLS. But my question to you, John, is, and this is what remains to be seen, how are we going to protect ourselves with these things? The listing agreement you have says 6% to you, or 6% total with no cooperating. What does it say? Because what if I produce an offer to you from ABC Builders and I put on there that I get 5%? Now, how do you present that to your seller? Your seller's gonna be like, fine, I don't care if you get 5% and you get 1%, right? So now, because that's an agreement between my buyer and the seller, we're not a party to that, but we're affected by it. So now do you go to your broker and say, hey, I was only gonna give them, or your seller, and say, hey, I was only gonna give them 3, now you gotta pay me 2 more? Or do you say, we go back and they're like, oh, we like this offer, the offer's great. You know what I mean? So that you don't have to answer that question, but that's something that we're going to have to flesh out. So your listing agreement should say that you're going to get that. And so I think what you're going to see a lot of, Carissa thinks you're going to see a lot of still 5%, 6% listing agreements. I think you're going to see a lot of 3 for me and let them fight for theirs. I think you're going to see a lot of that in the residential market, especially. But to answer your question about everything, it's an MLS rule. It's going to be nobody. I mean, it's not MLS. It's going to be an agreed upon settlement where you cannot offer anybody compensation. So I'm going to go back to the settlement real quickly, guys. It's still not approved, I don't think, by the judge, and definitely not by the DOJ. So it's not a thing yet. They're looking at mid-July.
Right.
So is there any practical application change on what I need to do with the listing agreement I'm expecting a signature on today? Because it was 6% and then we were taking the obligation for the co-op, and I'll just tell you, I was giving 2.5 because I've worked my butt off
Okay.
on getting this
Yeah.
thing.
Well, no, there's nothing you need to do right now differently. No, there's nothing you need to do right now differently.
Okay.
You won't see a practical effect of this even in MLS until July 1st. For me, I would continue to take every listing that I can. I would continue to ask as much commission as I could. The only change that I would make potentially if I were any of you is that I might restructure the way I usually write those listing agreements. And instead of agreeing inside the listing agreement to offer compensating a portion to a buyer's agent, I would probably keep it all on my side because that would allow you to be the most flexible in terms of negotiating once you have offers coming in from buyer's agents who may or may not already begin practicing the changes on their side of the business to this.
All right. One other follow-up detail then is I will not end up posting the buyer's compensation on my listing agreement then.
You can until July 1st. Nothing
July 1st.
changes practically for MLS until July 1st.
Okay.
And guys, I think that is also a big question mark that we have in terms of sitting back, watching, waiting to see how this plays out, is that there's been no guidance given whatsoever on what's going to happen with all of the existing listings in MLS that are active and not under contract on July 1st. We're going to wait to find out from MLS, from NAR, how we're to handle those.
Thank you.
That was my
All right.
question.
David.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Okay, first of all, yes, you did touch upon one of the issues, which is that it's proposed settlement, and the DOJ did weigh in on another issue, which was the it's NOSELEC versus MLS PIN. And apparently what the DOJ's issue is, they want total decoupling. They don't want, let me see what it said. They don't want, it's illegal to offer, each side will be independently negotiated. It will be illegal to offer anything to the buyer's agent before the seller gets an offer. So, that's just something to keep in mind, that they may step in, the judge has to approve this, whatever. I don't want to throw sand in the works. I'm just alerting you to the fact that it's a tentative thing. The other thing I read on a CNN news article, I'm not claiming they're a credible source, but I'm saying that they mentioned something that I haven't heard referred to anywhere else. And I've tried to find this and I haven't found it. The CNN article says another ends requirements that brokers subscribe to multiple listing services. I haven't seen that mentioned anywhere else. Have you heard that anywhere? That's in a CNN article, wherever they got it from.
Do you want to answer that, Carissa?
No, you go ahead. It broke up a little bit. I'm not sure I heard it all.
Okay, I heard it. So your broker doesn't have to be an MLS member now unless you want to be, and that's an association rule. And under whether you're a member of the NAR and FAR and your local board or not, you do have to be a member, your broker has to be a member of MLS for you to have MLS. So I'm not sure what that is, and that is a nationwide rule. There are certain states where you can not belong to your association and or your local, your state, or NAR, and still get MLS. That is something that can happen.
Yes, we are working on, presently, we're working on a third option for FRI agents. So right now with FRI, you're able to be a member of the associations and have MLS. You're able to join our referral brokerage and not be a member of the associations and not have MLS and simply refer business. And then as a third option, FRI will be offering a Thompson brokerage model where you can join that third Florida Realty Investments division and be able to have access to MLS without belonging to the association.
That's very thoughtful, not having those options. Thank you. Do you think many realtors are going to be looking for any way to escape NAR at this point? It seems likely.
A large amount of them. In fact, there's an article recently in the National Association of Realtors magazine from written by their economist, Lawrence Young, stating already in the last few months before the settlement how many realtors they're seeing leave the industry. And I think that that could only continue. A quick perusal of Facebook this weekend will tell you that that's going to continue in force.
Yeah, it's bedlam on that online. Okay, thank you.
All right, that was breaking news for you guys. So thank you for sharing that, Carissa. We will be introducing Thompson Brokerage for you guys as an option as well. So that's what you missed, Yvonne. Rakesh.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I guess some of the question already answered, but if I'm signing a buyer brokerage agreement today, right? Does it make sense to put in that my compensation in that? I know the ruling is not effective until July 1st, but in buyer agreement, does it make sense to put that hey, I mean, you will be responsible for my compensation? Any thoughts on that?
Great question. Let's talk about buyer brokerage agreements. That you guys know me. It's almost like a running joke how much I love buyer brokerage agreements amongst you guys. Yes, always put your commission in there. That's kind of the point. Put your commission in there. Now it's going to be, I stumbled onto this. I've been preaching it for a long time, to put your compensation in the buyer brokerage agreement. I did not foresee all this happening. I thought the model that we had was pretty good, but this is exactly what you need to do, Rakesh. Yes, great question. Yes, put your compensation in buyer brokerage agreement. That's going to be mandatory now, guys. Buyer brokerage agreement. I know a lot of you guys like to get paid when you help buyers. This is going to actually make it happen. So,
and then the second question, Ryan, is which I don't know, more of a hypothetical. So we don't have dual agency in Florida, right? Do you see that changing with this thing coming in? That okay, maybe you represent both buyer and seller, and that's how you earn your commission. Do you see that happening?
Dual agency is a bad word, but transaction brokerage is what we have. It's what you're assumed to be. And absolutely, I think that that's what Carissa was talking about a little bit earlier. I think you're going to see a lot of that, a lot of double siding deals. I think you're going to see a ton of that. I think buyers are going to, you guys have seen this. Every news outlet has put on social media this weekend. They put it on their news. You don't have to pay 6% anymore. It's like everybody just got a big bonus. No, you still have to pay. You still have to pay closing costs and commissions and all this stuff. It's how well you guys negotiate for that stuff. But buyers are going to believe this. They all took this terrible. The ones I saw on social media, they just completely mischaracterized it because they don't know what they're talking about. They just had to put a reporter on it. They're just giving facts and not really applying them correctly. So realtor tore those up when they saw them on social media. I don't know why people don't like you guys. I don't know why. It's all the stuff you guys put on social media about the beautiful houses you're chilling and boss babe and all this stuff. I don't know why people don't like you, and you pose next to other people's Ferraris and stuff. I won't go into all that, but I don't know why people are so glad that they're not going to have to pay realtors anymore. But this is something that they are going to do, and you're going to have buyers approach listing agents directly. You're gonna, what is this going to do to Zillow leads and Zillow, those kind of things? What's this going to do? Truly a realtor.com. People already think they're realtors. Now, what are they going to do when they don't think that they're going to have to come out of pocket to pay you? So I think they're going to go straight to Rakesh, the listing agent, and say, here's my offer. And I don't need your seller to pay my buyer's agent. So what do we do? Right?
Yeah.
So that's a question. Yes, you're going to see a lot more of that. Are people this was NAR's position, and this was everybody's position who was a believer in the system that we had, is how well are they going to be represented if they go straight to Rakesh, and Rakesh is representing his brother or his own house, but they don't want to deal with a buyer's agent. So how well are they going to be represented when they go straight to the listing agent? And because they're broke, what if Rakesh, you know what? You don't even need an inspection. This thing's great. How many are going to fall for it? I mean, how much litigation is going to come out of this? So it's pretty interesting. Also, how much litigation is going to come out of Rakesh gets a buyer brokerage agreement. His buyer is a full first-time buyer. They can't get concessions. They can't get anything, or they get all this stuff promised, and they promise Rakesh 2.5%, but they're also getting down payment assistance, and they're also getting half of the new roof. And the lender says, you guys are at 5% contributions and you can only be at 3%. where do you think that money's going to come from? The new roof or from Rakesh? You know, and so Rakesh is going to have to pursue them. They don't have any money, and he's going to have to pursue them in small claims court. So, I mean, guys, I'm going off here. I've been spending a lot of time on this, so I've got a lot of theories and stuff, and I don't want to be, you know, we don't know anything yet for sure. So,
and just a follow-up question, I think I personally believe this is a good thing, because I think to your earlier point, why with all the hard work, why we don't get the appreciation. I think a lot of the buyers don't see, but now I think going forward, probably when you get things for free, service for free, nobody appreciates it. I mean, that's just the nature of it, right? So I think maybe going forward, people will realize that, okay, there is a fee, that's what they have to pay, there is a service, right? So the second thing I think I was wondering is for the buyer agreement which we place, right? Is it is that, I mean, if somebody is not in a position to pay, right? I think it's also critical to have them explain what this agreement is, because a lot of times people don't read the agreement. They sign it, and then after the fact they say, oh, I did not know that I'm on the hook for 3% of commission when I'm buying a property, right? So I think I believe it is on me to explain whether, even if I lose that client, doesn't matter. I don't want to see a situation where they say, oh, I didn't know that I have to pay this, basically, because a lot of times people don't necessarily read every single fine print in the agreement.
yeah. So Rakesh, you haven't had the pleasure of being here long enough to go through one of my buyer brokerage agreement classes, but you will very soon. And I go through this. The biggest thing we do through that agreement is educate the buyers. They don't know, and they need to be educated. They need to know where the money comes from and all that stuff. And now that's all changed. So that's even great. Now you really have to educate them. But you're not yet. You have to build your value. You do this on purpose, or you're doing this as a service. But you made a great point before that. It's a good thing. It is a good thing if you're producing value. If you're making it known that you are of value, it is a good thing. This is a good thing. You will make more money. And there will be some people who don't do as well and drop out, and that's what, like Carissa was talking about, we're going to lose a lot of realtors, or we're going to lose. But if you go to work on this, you will absolutely do better. Christina.
Hey friends. Okay. I guess there's not necessarily like my questions are, it's just like you said, I called Rose on Friday and I have the same questions everybody has. My main questions are pertaining to like legal implications, which it sounds like it's just not really fleshed out. I don't want to be sued. I worry about fair housing implications. And like you said, I mean, nobody wants to work for free, but if you choose to take on a buyer that can't afford to pay you, but you're like, are we able to have a buyer's broker agreement saying, hey, I'll show you new homes and homes where they're offering me compensation? So yeah, I mean, those are just kind of the questions swirling around in my head. Things like the legality on our end so that we don't get sued and we don't, get ourselves in these precarious positions. I saw the comment earlier about, them banning offers of compensation. My understanding is just they're banning it in the MLS, so we can still state it in other places. And what I envision in this early stage is perhaps a homes.com, a Zillow.com is going to step up, or maybe we can create something, realtors can create something else centralized. But yeah, those are really my main questions is, just in terms of, the legality of the whole thing as it pertains to fair housing. My other set of questions, really, I think Carissa kind of touched on it, with the Thompson broker thing. And I wonder what is the true relevancy of the Realtor Association and the MLS. I mean, they've been great. It's a great centralized way to do things, but I don't know about everybody else, but I'm setting everything up there. I'm not like also checking Zillow. Now we're going to be maybe forced to, but I just wonder what I'm curious what, Ryan's and Carissa's thoughts are on the relevancy of the Realtor brand and belonging to the MLS. I mean, it looks like we're going to keep it as an option, but it's not necessarily going to be as mandatory. So those are my 20 questions for everybody.
Both things, Christina. As for the legalities and not wanting to be sued, Let me assure you that anybody can sue anybody at any time for anything that they want. That doesn't mean that they win. But as an agent with FRI, you're covered by our E&O insurance, and our E&O insurance for anything that, that this particular change could possibly imagine. Our E&O insurance would be stepping in and would be covering your legal representation and your defense. So you're as covered as you could possibly be on that side. As for the relevance of the National Association, I think it's a really good question. I really do. I've been thinking about it all weekend. I think that if the associations, because I believe that these changes also call into question a fair portion of the code of ethics, and some of that has to be rewritten to accommodate the ramifications of these changes as well. If the National Association is going to raise dues, which I can't see how they won't, and stake their membership value at some super lockboxes, I think that's a weak position. And I think that they're going to lose an awful lot of members. I also think that they lose an awful lot of members because I think that some of us feel a little bit punched in the gut about this, and that we weren't fully represented, and this really is not in our best interest. It's in NAR's best interest. So I think that there's going to be realtors, good members of our community that leave the association simply as a decision on whose side are they on. We're going to aim to be able to accommodate some of you still get a lot of value from other aspects of the association's membership, such as the community and the networking and the education and things like that. And so our goal here is to be able to accommodate all of you, whichever side of the fence you come down on that, and wherever you stand going forward, to be able to present the best opportunities to cover all of those needs. And I don't disagree with you that there's going to be another software. There's probably already softwares in creation apps. There will be something or more than one thing that's presented as an alternative to MLS. Not that it will be what takes hold, but there will be.
I also, another question I have is, what is, like what Ryan touched on earlier, is like the enforceability, because, what's the enforceability on a buyer broker? I mean, I know Ryan, I haven't been a big proponent of using them, but because I've always felt like, what is the enforceability? Me suing, my customer, and I guess that's really what it comes down to, right? If we have a buyer broker and they say, well, we're not going to pay you, do we hold up the closing? I mean, is that what we just allow it to close? And then it's
at the title company level, just like the listing agreement, just like you wouldn't see a transaction go to closing without the listing commission on there. You'll see the same thing with the buyer agent agreement. Your problem is going to come down to when something doesn't close, or when something can't close because there's too much in commissions or other fees that have to be paid. And like Ryan said, I think that we're going to see a lot of lawsuits surrounding that to flesh out how that's really going to work. I also think that we're going to see lenders react and act in such a way to still be able to get deals closed even when there are a lot of other fees and costs on the table. So I think that the buyer broker agreement and commission is going to be as protected as the listing side and done through the same mechanisms. It doesn't help you when it doesn't close. That will be small claims court. But we don't get paid now on the buyer side when something doesn't close. So that's not changing.
Yeah, legally, your buyer brokerage agreement is no less legally binding than their listing agreement. So who wins when this gets to, everybody turns theirs into the title company? Somebody's going to have to, it's just like you guys buy all these washers and dryers, people are going to have to work out how to cover this difference.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be, you're going to get those calls on closing day, those lovely calls where the title company tells you, your buyer doesn't even tell you, the title company tells you the buyer's short $4,000. What are we going to do? And there you go. What do you do?
I mean, a little more security on our end, because if they've got the equity in their home, but I mean, what I guess it all remains to be seen, but I appreciate it.
All right. raised hands. Angie's next, then John, then Ivan.
Thanks, Ryan. So currently when we have a listing agreement, we don't provide that to the title company to show that we're, signed off on getting paid. We just tell the title company in an email, I'm getting 3% or their portal, whatever it is. So if we are to use our own buyer's agreement, like I have one that I've been using, is that going to be the same, or do you think it will be more required to use the one from NAR?
Okay, no, I don't have a problem with you using your own, and we'll probably, I think a lot of brokerages are going to create their own or dress up the FAR bar one as they want to. That's probably something that we'll do. But you've got your own. I've seen yours before. Make sure everybody's signing it and everybody gets copies of it. No, right now, you guys know when you have a closing, the title rep emails you, both buyer's agent and seller's agent, and the listing agent and selling agent, and says, what percentage are you getting and are expecting? And what's your transaction fee? And so you guys are going to be, they're going to have to email both. Oh, now they email listing agent and say, what's the split or whatever? And then what's your transaction fee? Well, you guys are just going to have to, with everyone, as soon as they contact you, they're going to ask you now as a buyer's agent, where's your money coming from for this? I know you're not working for free. And do you have a transaction fee, et cetera? They don't, but they're not asking for proof of that now for when you tell them, yeah, we have a 350 or 175 transit, they're not asking you for proof. But the buyer can complain, and that's happened to some of you guys before. You've said, yeah, I've got a 350 fee, not realizing that, that the buyer, sometimes they try to charge the buyer, even though you've already told the buyer you pay for it or whatever. And the buyer says, no, I'm not paying that, so whatever. But they haven't been asking for proof before, but now you probably will want to present your buyer brokerage agreement and say, look, yes, buyer Bob is paying me, 2.5%, 3%, $7,500, whatever agreement you guys come to. It doesn't have to be a percent, it could be money.
The one that I have was from Keller Williams when I was with them, and it was what they were using and recommending. And I just made the changes and changed it to FRI and just made those few little changes. Okay. And then when it comes to pre-marketing, do you foresee any changes with that? Because if we're not, the reason that pre-marketing has been so banned and so limited is because of the other agents' compensation, essentially, right? Making sure that it's open to all buyers. So do you think we could see any changes to that?
That's a great question. And that's what Carissa was talking about with what kind of changes are we going to see to the ethics, code of ethics, MLS exclusions, all of that kind of stuff. You guys can always do that now with MLS exclusion form dated till next Tuesday, or whatever. And you can always pre-market it. But, I don't really see, realistically how that's a benefit to your seller, but it could be now a benefit to your seller to do that. So they don't have to pay, Tammy's agent, Tammy to bring her buyer, they can just pay you. And if you guys want to talk about dual variable commissions and stuff like that, I don't know that that's a great idea. Maybe you go in at 5%, and Chris and I were tossing this back and forth this morning with scenarios. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, so that's all stuff that'll shake out and you'll have to do, and feel free to run stuff by us before you do it. That would be great. Unless you it's okay. But if you have questions on it, you good, Angie? All right. John.
All right.
Yes. Hello.
Sorry, John Correa.
I think a lot of the things I had wanted to ask were touched on, but one thing in particular, if you have a buyer, since the seller does not need to even offer any money toward the buyer's broker, how do we approach that as far as percentage is concerned? To tell our buyer, well, you might be paying 2%, you might be paying 1%.
Well, no, you're gonna, with every property that comes up, John, you're gonna let them know. So you've got an agreement with them for 2.5% or 3%. With every property that comes up, hey, do you guys want to see this 123 Oak Street? They're not offering me anything. They're not going to help you with they're not going to help you with my commission. At least they're not advertising that they are. We might be able to get a concession out of them. But that's going to bring me to guys, and John, we'll get back to you. I'll raise your hand. I'll make you first when we get back to questions from you guys. And you'll probably have a lot more, but I want to bring on right now, he was very kind of to join us, the leader of Samaritan Group Mortgage. You guys got a lot of questions what we're going to do with lending and how this is going to affect that. So I wanted to have a friend of mine and a friend of the brokerage, Paul Massey, come in. Paul, please join us, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Thanks, guys, and thanks for having me. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Good.
perfect. Okay, so yeah, thanks for having me. You know, this is not the first time there's been a major shakeup with commissions. Believe it, if anybody remembers this, if they've been doing it for as long as I have, this happened to us on the mortgage side in 2010 with the Dodd-Frank Act, right? So it was a major shakeup, and it was kind of a little bit of the Wild West before that, but it certainly fixed the way that we did things. But it all worked out in the end. So I guess I think it's going to be a major change. At the same time, I think we've got two choices. We can bury our heads in the sand, or we can push forward. And I think that's happened in the recent past with COVID and a couple other things in our industry where it'll shake itself out. We just got to kind of keep pushing forward on it. With that, I've gotten a lot of questions about lenders financing real estate commissions. There's zero talks about that happening. With VA, it's like strictly prohibited on that. But I do think that there will be something, and I don't know if you guys have already touched on this, so I hope I'm not. I do have a situation where the buyer is paying the buyer's agent commission, and they work it out with the seller where they have seller paid closing costs. So there are seller paid closing costs, so the buyer can then afford to pay the real estate agent's commissions, and it's kind of a net neutral at the end of the day. So I do see that kind of negotiation happening on deals. Let me see what else I've got here. So really, that's where I going with us is through seller paid closing costs. Right now, there is no additional talks of it being financed in any way. And it just has to work out where the property appraises, and we structure it through seller paid closing costs if we go that route.
All right, guys, any questions for Paul? Paul, Paul, I've got a ton of questions. You and I talked this morning.
Yeah.
What happens if I've got a 3% deal with a buyer brokerage agreement, and then we have a roof issue and they need $8,000. That seller's happy to give them $8,000. The seller was going to pay my 3%. And then what are we going to do? We're obviously, do you see any change coming? You only have so much, some deals at 3%, some deals at 5%, whatever. But let's say they go over that. Obviously you're going to call me and say, Ryan, Mr. Smith has, we've got to get this roof done, and that's going to cut into your 3%. I can't do this loan if he's over 3%. I'm just giving you some scenario. So if he's over 3%, I can't do this loan. So he's getting too much money. He's getting too much concessions here. So
yeah, and I think now more than ever, it'll make sense to want to work with somebody that has experience moving things around. And we have that problem now sometimes. So we have that problem now where there is a major improvement like a roof, and there's seller paid closing costs, and the percentages just don't work out. The seller's already paying too much. And in those situations, we can actually put it on the seller's side of the HUD or their CD, where they're out of their proceeds from the sale, they pay directly contractor, and it doesn't affect any of the other percentages. So you just really, really, really now more than ever want to work with somebody that can, I don't even call it thinking outside the box. It's just, maybe it is just putting things in different places to make it all make sense at the end of the day. But a lot of lenders kind of miss the boat, and it kind of goes over their head on working improvements and interested party contributions into the same bucket when they do not have to be.
Okay. You had mentioned to me privately that you think that you're going to see some Like we would normally do, we need concessions to close an FHA deal or any kind of deal. You see a little bit of an inflated purchase price with concessions, and you think this is going to kind of increase that more than what we've seen before, obviously. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, and I kind of think it's more of the same, and just we're saying the same thing in different ways. I mean, I guess if you really want to look at it one way, you could say, well, the purchase prices were always inflated because they always had the agent's commission in there, and the property still had to appraise, right? So now it's just a different way to think about it with seller pay closing costs. Another thing that we can do on the lending side is we can, especially in a decreasing rate environment, we can offset the interest rate with credits, meaning if the par rate is 6.875 today and I give the borrower 7.375, we both know they're going to refinance by Q4 of 2025 with rates going down, right? So we can take that additional premium that we as the lender would earn from 6.875 to 7.375 and give that to the buyer as a credit to their closing costs. So essentially, we're giving them that extra premium so they can afford to pay any buyer's agent's commission as well.
Okay, so there's things to do to work around with creative lending.
There's a lot of things to do. I think it's, starting July on this. I think by October, it'll be more as business as usual at that point.
Okay. Do you see, as we're doing this, and you're going to see, obviously, a little bit, we're going to see a little bit, prices jump a little bit for this probably. Although they may ask less. So if I don't have to pay a buyer's agent, I can net more. A good listing agent's going to say, we didn't all just get, 3% richer last night. Everybody who owns a house, right, last week. Do you think there's going to be a little bit of an appraisal issue as they normalize the pricing? Do you think we're going to have to fight some appraisals?
I think some we will. I mean, because we all know, everybody on this call, that there are appraisers that you are really excited to see, and there are appraisers that you are not so excited to see. So I think that again, with the right lender, it pays me to say that, but I truly believe it. Lenders that just have a huge panel of appraisers that's hundreds of names long, there's more of a chance of you getting somebody that isn't really understanding the math or has an opinion on it and is just being a pain in the butt for no reason. But getting a lender that has maybe just 4 or 5 appraisers on the panel, they can really narrow it down and make sure that they've got people that understand what the change is and how to make it work within our system.
Okay, great. Any more questions for Paul?
I feel like we did this morning, but I looked at everything and I think we went over a lot of it.
We did, but I want to share that with everybody. But I think you've done a good job of doing that.
Yeah, Ryan, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Yeah. I know people would be concerned, agents would be concerned in a buyer-broker relationship that they're going to get paid. I'm assuming that you could write the buyer-broker agreement in such a way that it gets paid at closing out of the buyer's side. So the buyer has to come up with the money to get the closing and can't stick it to the agent that way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They can't close without covering their obligations, and you're going to send your requirement into the title company. So the title company is going to put that on their cash required to close. So
right, yeah. So
absolutely. But the problem comes when you get that buyer gets that cash to close and says, "Oh my gosh, I didn't sign on for all this, or I can't do it." And then you're going to get a call from the title company saying, "I just talked to the buyer, and the buyer said they're $4,000 short. Where's that going to come from?" And now you're going to call the listing agent and try to work something out. And you're going to call Paul and say, "Paul, can you squeeze anything out of this?
Yeah, right.
Can you help out a little bit?" Because Paul wants to see the deal closed too. So, that's, we all do for the good of the clients, both seller and buyer. Listing agent wants to see it closed. You want to see it closed. Paul wants to see it closed. Everybody wants to see it closed. So that's where we are. Paul, we had texted before. Tell me a little bit about when we had talked about this before you came on, about how this can be an opportunity. and you can bury your head. You told me this morning you can bury your head in the sand and be scared, or you can have an opportunity here. Tell me a little bit about what you think about that.
I mean, I've been dinosaur. I've been doing this since 2002. And I've seen so many things, especially recently, where there are defining moments in our industry where people can choose whether or not that's something that is what an opportunity, or, oh my God, what am I going to do? Right. I mean, I think we saw, you guys can all remember this with COVID. There are some people that were really freaked out about it and didn't want to, and thought it was going to affect the business in a negative way, and people are going to stop buying houses, and we're going to have 2008 all over again. And then there were people that just worked their butts off, right? And 6 months into it, so we're talking November, December of 2020, those agents that worked hard, it was really, really, really paying off. And that went all the way until about December of 2022, right? But the people that stayed on the sidelines, they were just reeling to try to catch up at that point. So I think I think this is even more of an opportunity, because there are going to be people, there are teams, entire teams that aren't really going to know how to handle this. And I think that there's not going to be a lot of things that happen in our industry that gives you a chance to kind of jump out in front of your competition like this. Yeah, I mean, it did the same exact thing for us guys with Dodd-Frank in 2010. And TRID, lenders didn't know what to do. They thought the business, people got out of the business because of it. And the people that stayed, the people that survived, were 100 times better off because of it. It was as bad as people thought it was going to be for our business on the mortgage side. I think it was the best thing that happened to us. I don't know if I answered that question or not, but
no, you absolutely did. And we got some stuff in chat too. Andy says she's changing her brokerage agreement to 4%. I love that. Everybody out there just heard, oh, we don't have to do 6% or 5% anymore. Angie's going to go in and say, I'll do 4%. No, okay, great. And then we'll deal with the buyer's side when it comes to it. Or if she gets the buyer. And Carissa came in right behind her and said, think about a scenario where you charge 3% and get an offer approved, pays you an additional 2%, because you're going to be representing the buyer as well. So there you go. Any more questions for Paul? I've got, I have a couple of raised hands here that we'll get to, guys.
I have one question for Paul.
Yes.
So given the change, right, Paul, would you be seeing that going forward, the lender will also like to look at the buyer brokerage agreement, what percentage commission is in there, to kind of factor that in the cost for the buyer?
So I think what you're saying is, are we going to specifically look at those, and depending on the percentages, have an opinion about them?
No, not opinion, but would you not need to know that, hey, I mean, part of the expenses buyer has to be ponying up is the 3% of the cost of the house, right? That's not something you want to
I
wait
see
till
what
the
you're
closing,
saying.
right? Yeah, right beforehand, right?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So yeah, let's say that I'm
borrow, how much? Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So if I'm dealing with a first-time home buyer that only has a certain amount of money for closing, and I don't know what your percentage is, I'm at a disadvantage and the buyer's at a disadvantage, right? Because if you and I don't have that conversation and I don't start putting it in my estimates to them, then when the road and the rubber meets the road, there's a nice track, this additional 3% closing cost that I didn't know about, I've misquoted them the entire time. So your answer to your question is 100% yes. I'm going to want to make sure I know where you're at with that buyer, so I can include that in what I'm quoting them, so you and I are on the same page.
Yeah, thanks. That's
great question.
He's not going to necessarily need a copy of it, but he's going to need to know what it is.
It's what it is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions for Paul? Directly for Paul. I know we had a little bit of a line.
I had one. Well, it's
Okay.
kind of, you just touched on it. That's what I was wondering, if it was legal to put that percentage on their initial worksheet so they can see what their closing costs are. And number two is, sometimes you get a buyer that could probably buy a house if the seller paid their closing costs, but those people look like they might be out of the running with the change and having to pick up the buyer's agent's closing cost or commission.
Yeah, I think, gosh, yeah, it could cause some people to sit on the sidelines for a little bit longer, especially at lower price points, because those are already tough, right? So when you have first-time buyers and they're competing with investors, and then they have to have down payment assistance or first-time buyer programs, and this is a new fee that they have to think about, yeah, it's probably going to be a little bit tougher for them, for sure. But I don't think that we necessarily have a problem with not having enough buyers. It's more not having enough inventory, right? So I think it'll cause some of those folks to have to wait another year to be able to do it. But I don't see that affecting anything in our median price range. I think it'll be kind of like the lower end, but we'll see.
But
Good
you
question.
can't put it on their cost worksheet when you quote
Yes,
them.
100%.
Rate, all of
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Wow, I missed that part of the question completely, and that was the first part. Sorry, Tammy.
Any other questions for Paul? We have hands up that were up before, so if you have a question for Paul, go ahead and just pipe in. All right, fantastic. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us, buddy. I appreciate you. Your office looks really nice. Looks like it's a beautiful day there at the office.
I'm actually on vacation today, but I love you guys, so I'm here.
I appreciate you coming in, buddy.
Ryan texted me this morning, and I said I'll be there. So
I did. I texted him at 7:27 this morning. Can I have Paul's contact information? Will you put that in chat for us, Paul, please?
I will figure that out. Yes.
All right. Fantastic. And Paul, I want to thank you very much for coming in. Just leave that in chat. It's working. You're doing great.
All right.
And so, Paul, thank you so much. Paul, Samaritan Mortgage Group, thank you so much, but I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, let's get back to our questions. Ivan is next.
Yeah, hi, everyone. I think it's probably safe to assume that any sales contracts we enter into before July 1st are going to be grandfathered in for any closings after July 1st, I would assume, right?
If they, that's everything that we absolutely understand. It's you're going by today's rules at the time of the contract, then you are due a commission.
All right, that's what I was thinking too. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Any contract's already under contract is already agreed upon. It was offered, accepted, et cetera. There has to be a start and end date to that, though. So yes, what's going to go on with listings in existence? That was a question that we had and we touched on earlier. And Malvis had actually asked me this question before one of the many questions I got over the weekend. Yes. If you have it, they'll probably make you change it. If you have a listing going on in the middle of July when this all takes place, and you and the rules change and the MLS setup changes, you will probably have to do that. Do you need a new listing agreement and all that? I don't know. That's something we're going to have to see. I would think maybe. I don't know. So that's something we're going to have to see. We don't know yet. Rakesh. Okay. Rakesh, you may have already asked your question.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was on mute.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I was wondering, Ryan, if you are signing a new buyer brokerage agreement now, right? And between now and July, when this takes effect, assuming the approval and all that, and you put that a buyer has to pay me certain my commission, whatever that percentage is. Then if we got into a contract where there is also seller paying that, do you?
Right. Well, that's the way the buyer brokerage already is. Rakesh, that's the way it's always been. You put on there, 3%, And I don't know that people were ever pursuing it if they only got 2.5%, if they agreed to sell them a house that was only paying me 2.5%. This has happened to any of you guys who have used a buyer brokerage agreement. You got them to sign for 3%. Then you go, you buy 123 Oak Street and they were only offering 2.5%. You just took your 2.5%. You didn't charge them the other 0.5%. People haven't done that. But to answer your question, no, obviously the buyer brokerage agreement you get signed today for 3%, that's going to be what you're going to want to have in the future. So you just leave it there. The buyer has always owed that money, but it's always been paid for out of the cooperating amount. Now, has anybody ever pursued that? Sure, because there have been times before when people, I know we had an agent do it, where they were due a certain amount, but they only got offered 1%. And they said, Joe customer, I can sell you this house, but I'm only gonna make, $2,000 and you're gonna owe me another $6,000, whatever it was. So, and the buyer says, well, that's fine because it's a really good deal or whatever, right? So yes, that's been done before. People have pursued that before, and buyers have just said, yeah, I'll pay you because they're not paying you anything, so that's all happened before.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. So it's really, I think, how you word it in the agreement that, okay, my intent is to make up to 3% if I get that from the buyer side, seller side, or if it's significantly less than that, then you have to maybe give me the gap or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
I feel like you're doing your buyer a service if you negotiate for it, right? So it's something you try to negotiate for, so you can collect. That answer your question? So keep up the good work with the buyer brokerage agreements, Rakesh. Sounds like you're doing great with those. That's what you got to keep doing.
One more follow-up question, Ryan, on the, I heard at the outset of the call about NAR probably going to charge more money and all that going forward. What is that? I mean, we have the option to kind of not renew the NAR membership next year, right? We already paid for 2024.
Well, you've always had the option not to pay NAR every year.
Okay.
You just end up on so we do have a referral brokerage, as you guys know. And you guys have asked me before, I've had tons of you guys ask me before, what if I don't want to pay NAR? What if I want to pay the board? I don't want to pay this. You absolutely cannot do that. But you wouldn't have had MLS. And so, if you want to make a living, you got to have the MLS. It's the way it's always been, right? So now what Carissa announced earlier was that we're going to have a Thompson brokerage, which means you won't have to join NAR, FAR, or your local board, and you will have MLS. You do have to pay MLS, but only MLS. So how much is that? $600 and something a year now, or something like that, probably, as opposed to your NAR, FAR, and your local board, which are another $600-700, which is going to be more. So I don't think it's crazy to predict that's going to be more. So any other, go ahead. Sorry?
No, thanks, Isaac. Thank you.
Okay. John.
Yes, Ryan. Again, most of the things have been touched upon. I was going to ask if you sign a buyer's broker agreement with a prospective buyer, and it goes on a percentage, and you go through 6 weeks like a lot of us do, show them 10 houses, and then they decide they're not going to go through with buying. In the past, I've never asked for any compensation for that. Is this still applicable in that way, or do we need to ask for compensation for that?
Okay, nothing changes as far as that goes. This has nothing to do with that. It's always had a retainer on there. You could always have charged them, and you can make it. If you look just above the compensation lines on there, you can make it either refundable or not, or goes towards the purchase or not. So just you charge them $1,000 or $500 that goes towards the 2.5 or 3%, whatever you're charging to sell them the house.
Okay, I didn't know if we could do that, but now that it's mandatory, now that it's mandatory that we have to have a written agreement.
You might as well put that in there. So have them send the $1,000 to FRI, and we will hold it for you.
Right.
If it's non-refundable, we'll release it to you. Actually, we probably could release it to you either way. The way it's written, it's either goes credits toward their commission or it doesn't.
Yeah.
So
I have a listing that's going to go active the first of the month, and I have it in the paperless pipeline already. And then those people are going to buy another house. Now, hopefully our time schedule will not be interfering with this July 1st thing, but I will have them sign a buyer's broker agreement. Obviously, I have the listing agreement already with them. So I would need to follow up with a buyer's broker agreement.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay,
Yes.
and the other thing, just an observation, I've been around for a while in this thing, and I thought that 2 or 3 years ago, Zillow especially was trying to get into a position where they would control or be able to do away with the MLS, and it seems like they've been successful.
I don't know if that's what's going to come out of this or not, but they've been successful in everything, mostly because of we don't want to get too far into this, but NAR bowing to them as well, which has kind of sold us out a little bit in some people's opinion.
Yes, I was gonna say that, but I don't think they sold us out, because I know it's very complicated. But I'm sure, it crossed my mind, and I'm sure it has crossed other people's minds. And I hope that it gets straightened out to the point where we do have a viable MLS system still, because it could evolve, it seems to me, into a system where everything is a FSBO.
Yeah, could. It could. Just imagine the legalities and the legal complications that would come out of that. I don't want to get into that. But that absolutely could happen. Malvis.
Yes, thank you, Ryan. Some of the questions that I had were already answered by Paul, but I do have one more. Come mid-July, when this is in place, what would happen with previous listing agreements that are, and then you kind of answer, but for example, listing agreements that the sellers agreed to pay both buyer's agents and listing agents fee that were signed like 6 months ago. Come mid-July, those homes are not under contract or not sold yet. What is our job as listing agents? Do we go back to those sellers and say, hey, by the way, 6 months ago, you agreed to pay 6%, and I will split that 6%, 3 and 3. But guess what? Now in July, you don't have to do that anymore. What do you want to do? So what do we do?
Malvis, the answer to that is we don't know. We talked about that a little earlier. We don't know. Carissa, do you want to weigh in on this? I think they're going to tell you what to do before then. I think they're going to have direction.
This is just one of the things we have to wait and see how it plays out. I mean, there's obviously going to be listings in progress. So at whatever point in time this takes effect. So we'll just have to wait and see what the guidance is that we're given at that point.
Yeah, because it's too early to go in now and do it the other way. I think, being 4 months out.
I would repeat, though, what I said earlier to the gentleman who was writing a vacant lot listing. I would continue to write listings. I would continue to ask for as much in compensation percentage-wise as you think you can get. The only difference, the only change I would make is I would keep it all on your side. Only for the reason of leaving as many options open to you as we continue to see changes and continue to see how this is going to play out. That would be me personally.
I agree. I think it's great if you're writing a listing tomorrow to put 6%. And the listing agreements we still have from the FAR bar, all the exclusive rights of sale, all the listing agreements we have still have a place to offer cooperating brokerage. I think I would just do 6% now, whatever you can get, and do that as a total. And then when it comes time to go to contract, then you offer them whatever you offer them, whether you get the buyer or someone else brings it. Because it just hasn't gone into effect yet. So when when you get people who say, oh, I saw on channel 35 that we don't, we're not offering the other side anything anymore, and say, well, that takes effect in July. It's not approved yet. Tammy.
This seems like an easy solution, but it could be crazy. why wouldn't somebody just develop a separate site where once you put your listing in the MLS, you go to the other site, put your address in and what your compensation is. And then as an agent, you go into that site and you look up the address and you kind of see what they're compensating you.
Yeah, there's certainly going to be new softwares written and probably some additions made to existing ones. Whether or not one of those becomes the solution and takes hold, I don't know. But really, guys, all we can really do is think about this like in the way that commercial real estate has always been being done. For any of you who have ever searched for anything for a friend or a prospect on LoopNet, for instance, they don't put compensation there. You have to call and find out what, if anything, they're willing to offer you. And if they're not offering you something, but it's something that's really perfect for your client, then you go to the client and you say, how much are you willing to pay me? We're talking about really the same thing. And I think that we're also talking about a situation where everyone makes more on transactions for the most part, because you can stack the different ways that you get paid. It's just going to be about being strong enough to bend and adapt and getting very, very good at however it is that you find that it works for you. And I think we've given some examples up in the chat as well of different ways that this can work. And I'm sure there's more.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot to be seen how it'll work. Guys, if you had your hand up a minute ago, I accidentally lowered them all. There were just a couple. So go ahead and put those hands back up if you had your hand up. Yes, Marcus.
So Ryan, yeah, so pretty much what Tanya was saying, sort of how I opened up the call, and Carissa sort of also started the call with those comments. If in listings we just focus on the fee is 5 or 6%, whatever it is, and ignore that second part, that B conversation, what I'm doing with that 5 or 6%, that is the fee, and that covers the new law. It's 5 or 6% is what it is, and what we do with it is like it's my money. Don't worry about what I'm going to do with it. In essence, that if we handle listings that way, and then the communication comes, however it comes, to a third source, whatever that second conversation has to have, third party would be a perfect sort of solution, website, whatever it may be, or versus having to make a dozen phone calls. But that's how I sort of open up the conversation. And Carissa said it 3 or 4 times. If on listings, get as much as you can. And just that's the conversation. I think in most listings, I don't do many listings. I think most people have the conversation. You don't start with the B, hey, I'm giving you 2.5, I'm giving 2.5. You start with it's 5 or 6. Just end it there. And then the conversation is business essentially will go on as normal if we adapt that way, in essence.
Right. Couldn't have said it better. I think that's excellently stated. It's look, as much as we all want to help our customers and clients, and we do help them. I think it's business. You're writing a listing agreement, get as much as you can. You're writing a buyer broker agreement, negotiate as much as you can. Let it all fall out and play out later. But upfront, get as much as you can.
Absolutely. And Marcus, that's fantastic. And Marcus is a strong salesperson who's going to go in and do that. And that brings me to my favorite question I've ever gotten in chat. Is there a tutorial on the buyer brokerage agreement on our YouTube channel? Not only is there one, Donna, there's going to be a live one here probably Wednesday. I think I'm going to do it Wednesday, buyer brokerage agreement. It's never been more important than it is now. You guys have always hated it because you don't like the sales part of that. A lot of you don't. A lot of you love it. A lot of you don't. But you know, timid salespeople have skinny kids. You guys have got to be tough. You've got to be negotiating. You've got to be explaining your worth, your value, what you're going to do. There's a whole section of it that goes through broker responsibilities. Here's all the things I'm going to do for you. You should also, and I've told you guys this, there's 184 things, there's 301 things, there's all these things. If you Google list of things that realtors do for people and for their clients, what, you know, you guys want a discount agent? What of these things do you not want me to do? You want me to negotiate the best deal for you? I won't. You know, you don't come out that strong, but something similar to that. Say, these are all the things that I do for you, and let them know, because they don't understand or respect or whatever. And part of that's your fault for social media, but it's always been a little bit of that. You know, they think you make your own schedule, you work when you want, you don't do much, you show a couple pretty houses and you make a lot of money. That's not what it is. You guys know that. That's why you're here today. So, but buyer broker agreement will be covering it. Michaela just actually sent you a direct YouTube of that for buyer brokerage for Don.
Ryan, I would encourage to not only check out what we already have recorded and listen to Wednesday if you're not familiar with it, but then I would say keep involved, keep hearing everything you can on the buyer brokerage agreement, because the form will change probably multiple times. And so if you hear of another training, not just through us, but keep your ears peeled, keep your ears to the ground on this. Continue listening, continue learning as that form and the listing agreement go through changes over the next year or two, because they inevitably will, both of them.
Yes, we're gonna have a lot of form changes here soon. Amar Louis June, you have a hand up?
Yes, I was just going to ask, I got into the meeting late because I was having a hard time. Is there a replay of this meeting so I can hear it from the beginning?
Yes, it's being recorded and it'll be on our YouTube channel, which they just put a link in chat. It'll be on our YouTube channel. Angie Alstott just posted it in the chat. If you want to go up a little bit in there, you'll see a link to our YouTube channel where you can see. Now, this won't be available for a day or two, but you can see all of our previous ones in there. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Someone else just had a hand up and took it down, I guess. Any other questions? Chris, is there anything else you want to cover before we go? Carissa, is there anything you want to cover before we go?
No, I think I'm pretty good.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, hopefully you guys have gotten some out of this. We have a lot of things coming, a lot of changes coming to our industry. It's pretty exciting. I think the thing I want to leave them with, Carissa, you agree with this probably, is that this is an opportunity. This is like Paul said, you're shaking the jar up. If you didn't like your position in this industry before, now's your chance to get a better position in the industry. David, you did have that. You're the one who had your hand up. Take it down. What's going on?
I did, and I actually forgot my question. That's why I put my hand down. My question was, I was under the impression that Zillow and the other aggregators actually got their information from the MLSs. So, I mean, what's going to happen if we decide we're not using MLS? I mean, our competitors die, right?
Yeah, and you can't put whatever your concessions you're going to make. I don't think you're going to put them in the, although you probably could for a roof or something, but I don't think you can put them in there in the public remarks, which is all you're going to see on a Zillow. That's the only thing they can share. So I don't know. There's so much to be seen, David, and I don't know that you'll be able to get that on Zillow. I doubt that you will. But I don't know. Right now, if I want to put on there, we're offering $2K for new appliances, I can do that. I can put some concessions on there. Can I not say we'll pay your buyer broker? It's either a thing or it's not. It's either a private thing we do between realtors that we offer each other, or it's not, or it's a public thing. So who's to say? I really don't know. That's an interesting question, and I don't know that you're gonna be able to find that on Zillow. And I don't, hey, we're offering 2.5% to a buyer's broker. I don't think that's going to be on public remarks.
Coded comments all into the chat. Everybody will know what a code means, but nobody will say what it means.
Right, Beatrice.
Yes, hi. Question, and I guess I think I know the answer, but this doesn't affect new construction, right? Like builders, developers, they can put in a commission without a problem out there, correct?
Well, they're advertising how much they'll pay you, and they're putting a commission agreement in on first couple of pages. That's what we look for when we get them the first couple of pages of the agreement. So it won't affect them unless except the ones that are putting on MLS. Obviously, they'll have the same rules as everybody else.
Okay, that's what I
but Beatrice, that's a great question. That how you treat new home builders now is exactly how you'll be treating all listings from now on. You'll call and say, "What are you guys paying?"
Oh,
you call, you go on their website, you can see what they're paying. You can see that you can do the same thing for your listings. You can get the message out there. You just can't get it out there through MLS.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right. Daryl.
Hey, everyone. I also heard through the news feeds that I've been listening to, of course, over the weekend and so forth, that prior sellers can possibly get the buyer's fees, the commissions that they've paid. Actually, I think they're going back to, like they said, 2019. So I'm not sure if that's true. I don't know if but it's part of the settlement, part of the 400 and whatever $1 million settlement, that some sellers can go back and ask for those buyers' commissions to be returned to them. So that's interesting. I had what, 3 or 4 myself, maybe more. I'm ready for that. That's all.
Yeah. Let's hope they don't come after the ones that you made though.
Guys, don't worry about it though. We are covered by this settlement. If it's part of the 418 million, it's already being paid. You don't even have to continue to be an NAR member to be covered. You're covered. And you're also covered by FRI's E&O insurance all the time. All of your past transactions that you've done here.
Okay. Beatrice, is your hand still up or did you have another question?
Nope, never lower it. Sorry about that.
No problem.
You lower it. There you go.
All right, awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming out. We have some big we have some big news coming out, and Carissa hit on it a little bit earlier. We will be having a Thompson brokerage. We'll be giving you guys as an option, and we'll be discussing that more in the coming days. I appreciate all you guys coming. Hopefully this has quelled some of your fears. You guys kept me really busy this weekend, which was great. And I thought we really needed to address this. Thank you, Carissa, for coming on. Thanks to Paul Massey for coming on. And if you guys need anything else, we'll be available for you. I'll see you guys on Wednesday. It's official. I'll be doing the buyer brokerage agreement again, which you actually are going to need to start using mandatory. That's not even an FRI thing. That looks like that's an industry-wide thing. So if you want to get paid, that's what you're going to need to do to get paid. All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate. See you all soon. Keep up the great work. It's an opportunity, guys. Don't be scared.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.